Okay, so if you followed the first video, you should now have your Pong class, which extends JPanel. You have your frame that's initialized with your passed in title, your close operation, and the dimensions. That is passed in through our constructor method. You've set the dimensions, you've set the location relative to null to center in the screen, you've disabled resizable windows, and you've added the JPanel, the Pong class. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to set up our main method so that we can just get it all set up and not have to worry about it anymore. So what we're going to want to do down in the main method is do a long variable called current time, right? So that's going to keep track of our delta time that we're going to be using to draw our animations based on the set speeds. So long current time is equal to system.current time milliseconds. Sorry, current time millis. And we're also going to want long delta t, our delta time, and let's just initialize that to 0. And let's just start an infinite while loop while true. Let's just pass in a raw Boolean value there. And we're going to want to update our delta t, and it's going to be delta t is equal to our current time every time this while loop is checked minus the current time, which is kind of a misleading variable name. Current time as in the time that it was recorded. So we have the real current time minus the previous current time is our delta t. Right, and so we're going to want to call our Pong object that we defined up here, this Pong. Let's just do Pong.updateGame. We haven't made that method yet, but we will here shortly. And let's pass in our delta t variable. And then let's do current time plus equals our delta time, delta t. That'll just keep our current time that we assigned here updated. And most importantly, it keeps our animation smooth because we're not assigning it to a new system.current time milliseconds, which could be slightly different from this delta t initialization to a few lines down. It's just bad news. So just do current time plus equals delta t. Right, so let's get that update game method added to our Pong class. Just make sure I have that up here. Update game. Okay. So we want a private void. We're not going to return anything here. Named update game. Takes in that long delta time. Great. So here is where we're going to update all of our object positions to do update ball and bar positions. Okay, so here's where we're going to make some more methods to pass in our delta time to handle the animations, how far they should move, etc., etc. Now we can call frame.repaint in our update game method. What this will do is force frame to call a certain method on its components, right? So our next step, so that frame.repaint is actually useful, is to create an override method for a JPanel object, sorry, a JComponent object, and it's going to be right here. So at override, let's just mark this as an override method, protected void paint component, and it takes in a graphics object G. Great. So this is where we will actually be drawing our visuals onto our JPanel. By calling frame.repaint, it basically forces this method to get called to update our visuals. Handles all that for us. Okay, so just right away here we can probably do g.setColor. Let's just set the color of the graphics drawing. Let's just assign that color.black for our black background. And we can go ahead and do g graphics, our g graphics object.fillRect. Let's just give that a 0x, a 0y, and fill it with the full width of our J panel, the full height of our J panel. That'll just make sure that at every iteration it draws a black background. Pretty insane. Okay, so we're gonna leave it at that. We're gonna leave the paint component method as that. Let's run this here and see if it did anything. As you can see, you have a black window now. You've upgraded from light gray to black. Pretty impressive stuff. Alright, so let's move on to a key listener for our class, which basically handles key events. So, you know, when you click the up and down arrow on your keyboard. So after we extend our J panel up here in the Pong class, let's just do implement key listener, right? You're going to have to import that, Alt Enter when it pops up on the prompt. It does that nice automatic importation, and you'll notice that you'll get an error here. It's because we're implementing key listener, which means we have to implement the methods that are required for key listener. So IntelliJ is very nice about this. Let's just go under our update game method, get a few lines down, right click, generate, implement methods, and you are required to implement all of these methods even if you're not going to use them. Okay? So we are actually not going to use key typed, right? So we can just comment here, not used. Okay, but on key pressed, so when a key, as in the up or down arrow, is pressed, let's do something fancy here. So the key press takes a key event object E. If e.getKeyCode, which just identifies which key you've been, or which key has been pressed, is equal to equal signs there. Key event dot vk up is just a predefined static variable for your arrow key up, not your numpad up as in 8 on your numpad, but your actual up key arrow. We're going to want to set a Boolean value of is moving up equal to true. Else, if the e.getKeyCode value is equal to key event dot vk down, the down arrow, let's set a Boolean is moving down equals to true. Okay, and let's just go ahead and define those variables up at the top of our class. Private Boolean is moving up, is moving down. Right. And in our constructor, let's just go ahead and initialize those to false. Is moving down is equal to false, is moving up is equal to false. Now let's go up to our key released. This is when you release the keys. Obviously the method names don't really need much explanation. It's going to be the same exact structure here. In fact, I can just copy and paste from our key pressed method. Copy paste. If it's the up key that's being released, let's just swap these true values to false. So up is being released, is moving up is no longer true. If the down arrow was released, moving down is no longer true. Okay. And that is basically it for the key listener. Okay, so I know I promised some graphics in this video, some fancy graphics on the screen, so let's just go over here to our source folder where we created our Pong class, right click, new, Java class, and let's create a new class called bar. This is going to be an object to create both the user bar and the AI bar. Okay, just name it bar, class, and click OK. Alright, same thing as what we did for Pong. We should set some variables here. Private float. We're going to need an X value, a Y value, the speed. Let's just set width, height, and because we're going to be doing a lot of graphics calculations, let's just throw in a half height variable. So in swing, 0, 0 on your coordinate system is the top left, actually with most visual libraries, the coordinate system is 0, 0 at the top left, which means that it's kind of confusing. For the x-axis, the x-axis is the same, but for height, you increase the height, so like 100 on the y-axis is actually lower on your window than 0 on the y-axis, if that makes any sense. You'll see that in a little bit. It just kind of messes with you at first when you're not used to it. Let's create a constructor method for the bar object, or the bar class, public bar. Let's pass in a float width and a float height. Same thing as the Pong class. Again, this dot width is equal to width. This dot height, height is equal to height. You can do this dot half height is equal to height divided by 2. Just gonna save a little bit of computation so that you don't have to calculate that every single time you want to do something with it. And let's go ahead and I lied. We need another object in our global variables. We're going to name that private Pong. Let's just name it Pong in the bar class. So this is just going to be our Pong object, our main game object. And so we're just going to be able to reference values by having that Pong value. So let's add that to our constructor method. A Pong Pong. And then under the width and height, let's just use this dot Pong is equal to Pong. Okay. Now, let's set our speed. So the way this works, we're going to do this dot speed is equal to our Pong object's height, which is just the height of the window wherever you assign that in your main method, wherever you pass that in. Maybe. Oops. Let's just remove the private from the width and height in the Pong class. That'll be easy. So remove private in your Pong class from the inth width and height declarations. That should fix that. So we're going to take the height of our window, okay? And what we want to be able to do is this bar should be able to move 45% of the height of the window every second. Okay, I've been messing around with values, and that just seems to be a pretty good speed for the bar. Okay, so to achieve that, it's just the simple speed equals distance. What is it? Speed equals distance times time. Something like that. Yeah. So speed equals distance times time. So we want to do height times 0.45, which is 45%. Add an F to that to declare it a float. And let's divide that by 1,000. So 45% of the height, which is what you get here, right? So height, which is currently 800 times 45%. And the reason we're dividing it by 1,000 is because all of our timestamps are in milliseconds. So what this essentially says is 45% of the height every second. Just you can imagine just ignoring these 3 zeros here. It's just to declare them in milliseconds. Pretty simple. That should be good for the bar class. We're going to need one more thing here. Update. I have it called update user bar. Right. Okay. So we want a public void in our bar class named update user bar position. Okay. This is going to accept a long delta time variable as the method parameter. Okay. So what we can do here, if Pong, our Pong object that we pass into the bar class, the is moving up. I lied. We're going to need to go back to our Pong class and remove the private from our Boolean declaration as well. Sorry about that. So now we should be able to do Pong.isMovingUp. So if the key up arrow is pressed, that isMovingUp Boolean is going to be set to true. So if we do an if statement, if that Boolean is true, and if this bar, so if this dot y is greater than 0. Let's take this y value, and here's where it gets messy. So we're moving up, but on the coordinate system we're moving down. So we need to do minus equals this dot speed times the delta time. This just ensures by multiplying by delta time here, which is going to be passed passed through in our main loop. This just ensures that we move this 45% per second based on how much time has elapsed. Okay? Fairly simple. So let's go down to this if and add an else statement. This else if Pong dot is moving down. Let's just say if this dot y plus this dot height is less than the height of the window. Okay. Oops. Pong dot height. So if this dot y, which is 0, 0 on the coordinate system, plus its height, which will bring it down to the bottom of the bar, if that is less than the height of the window, which is the bottommost value. So we're basically restricting it from 0 to the bottom of the window so that it can't, when you're holding the up or down arrow, it can't go off the screen. That's what we're doing right here in this update bar position. Okay. Within the if statement here, we're just going to do this dot y is plus equals to this dot speed times delta time. Okay. Boom. Update user bar position is now done. Let's just rename that to update bar position. I have it structured slightly differently in my reference code, which is why I keep having to backtrack. But let's just rename that to update bar position instead of specifically the user bar. Okay. So if we go back to our Pong class, update bar position, we should be able to go to our update game method that we wrote that we have not done anything in. Not yet. Okay, so here we can do user bar dot update bar position, and let's pass in the delta time variable, and let's scroll up to the top of this Pong class. Let's go ahead and create a private bar object called user bar. Let's go ahead and define that user bar object in our constructor method of Pong. Just do user bar is equal to a new bar, and for the width value we're going to want to do the whole width of the screen. Let's just do divided by 50. Okay, so it's going to be 1/50th of the width of the screen. For the height, let's just do the height of the whole screen, and let's just multiply that by 0.1. So let's make that basically 10%. Actually, that's sloppy. Why am I doing that? Let's just do height divided by 10 float value, and we added the Pong to our constructor method of bar, so we're just going to need to pass in this as the final parameter. Okay, and let's go ahead and set the x and y values. So the initial value for the x and y coordinates when the game starts, we want that to be centered on the screen on the y-axis, and then offset on the x-axis so it's not slammed to the left side of the screen. Okay, so let's just do user bar dot x is equal to the width of the whole screen. I really suck at this. Remove private from the bar class. We don't need privates. I don't know why I keep, okay, let's just remove private from everything. Anywho, so user bar dot x is going to be equal to the width of the whole screen divided by 8. It's going to be 1/8 of the width. Okay, that's just going to be the offset, so it's going to be 1/8 from the left of the window. let's go ahead and do userbar.y is equal to the height of the whole screen divided by 2, so center it, but we also need to factor in the height of the bar because 0, 0 is not the center of the bar that you will visually see. So we need to offset that by minus userbar.height, actually userbar.halfHeight, sorry. So we're going to need to offset that by userbar.halfHeight, okay? So now, if everything goes according to plan, we should be able to go into our paint component, which is our visual logic for drawing everything, okay? We should be able to draw our bar and then be able to move it around with the up and down arrows. Okay, so what we need to do, since we have float x and y values, instead of using this graphics object, we need to cast it into a graphics 2D object. To simply do that, just do graphics 2D GG is equal to, and in parentheses, let's just do graphics 2D to cast our graphics object G. Okay, so we're casting this G graphics object into a graphics 2D object. Let's set a color here for our painting, gg.setColor. Since we have a black background, as defined up here, let's just do color.white for the bar. Okay, now we need to create a 2D rectangle to actually draw the bar. So let's do rectangle 2D. Let's just name it. We got to import that. Alt Enter. You want java.awt.geom as your import statement. So let's just do rectangle 2D. Let's just name it bar user. It's a user bar. Is equal to a new rectangle 2D dot float, because we're going to pass in float values here. Okay. Let's just pass in the x, y, width, and height. So user bar dot x, user bar dot y, user bar dot width, and user bar dot height. Now what we can do, since we have the rectangle 2D object, we can take that graphics 2D object, gg dot fill, which just means it'll draw the shape but fill in the color instead of doing just an outline. Okay, so gg dot fill bar user. Boom. Now if we right click, run pong.main, you see this fancy bar, offset 1/8 to the left, centered on the y-axis. Now if we click the up arrow, nothing. Shit. Okay, so sorry about that. The reason that the up arrow didn't work is because we didn't assign the key listener. So what we need to do as a final step, I promise, I know I'm sucking at this, is take our frame object, our window that we're actually going to be playing the game in, frame, dot add key listener. Since we've implemented Pong as a key listener, we can just pass in the value of this. Drum roll please, right click, run pong.main, we have the beautiful bar, centered, offset, click the up arrow, woo, and it moves at the defined speed, 45% of the height per second, okay? And you will notice also that because of our restrictions in the bar class, this, if it's moving up and if the y is greater than 0, we can go ahead and adjust the y to move it down. Sorry, to move it up. But if the key down is pressed, we restricted it so that it can't go past the maximum height value, which is actually the bottom of the screen. So 800 is down here, not up here. So if we try to go off the screen, we can't. Beautiful. Well, that concludes this horrible, sloppy, disgusting tutorial. Tune in to the next episode where we'll actually be adding the AI bar, and we'll be adding a ball object that will actually bounce off some craziness and will calculate the angle for where it hits the bar, which angle it should ricochet off based on the location of the ball relative to the bar. So tune in to the next episode and go ahead and click that like and subscribe if you actually enjoyed my sloppiness. Until next time.